Matt. He's this great guy from Ohio, man. Matt knows everything. Man, I'm telling you what, just listen to what he's got to say because you're going to learn tons. It's going to blow you away. And man, I mean, we're just so thankful to have you here today, Matt. So, Matt, take it. That'd be me.
There you go. It's not a bad intro.
That was perfect.
All right. Well, that's nice for people to see. Hey, this is we are in the virtual world. I can walk up to Matt and be like, "That's my brother, man." Talk to him. We'll do a little shake real quick. Have you done the shake the hands yet?
I haven't done the wave.
Yeah, if you go down to go to your name, hit shake hands. We're a little far away. Let's get closer. You got a good shot of that, Tony?
I do.
All right, here we go. We're gonna do it. So we need people to see what we can do here in real slow. There we go. Nice shake.
There it is.
One more. Stay there. We'll get a better one here. We're gonna figure out how to do the high-fi and everything. We're gonna get it down. Awesome. Nicely. Well, hey, thanks, Matt. Again, we appreciate you being here so much and being in the Spark. And again, everybody, Matt's got he's got some great things to share today, and I'm gonna let him take it away. So, take it away, Matt.
Great. Thanks, Will. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Right. All right. Well, let's jump in. So just a quick bit about myself. So I'm a bit of an odd combination of things. So I'm a technologist by day. I head up a technology organization for a variety of different industries, a lot of time spent in legal, but I've spent time in pharmaceutical industry, consulting, marketing, you name it, but always with the technology and business lens. And more recently, also an author. So talk a little bit about a journey. So this was a story about a book, and I'll tell you how it came to be, but also talk about the content of it, which I think is relatively germane here. And it has to do with how AI, which has always been a passion of mine, how AI and the freelance economy or the gig economy are transforming work. And that's really across industry. So whether it's in the professional setting, manufacturing, tech itself, certainly entertainment, music, art, and so forth. Really, these items are fundamentally shifting how we approach work, how we approach projects, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. So, kicking off with the obligatory embarrassing photos. So if you can see on the board behind me, that little guy there holding that cat, yes, that is an authentic Cabbage Patch doll. Circa 1980s. I was about 9 years old when that picture was taken, and most relevant is the arrow pointing behind me to my very first computer, which was a IBM PC Junior. So that dates me a bit. And we got it for Christmas. My dad had planned to set it up the next day. I woke up at about 7 a.m. the next morning, raced downstairs, set the whole thing up, and had it working before my parents woke up. So I became the computer guy from then on. So been around technology my whole life. I was talking with Melinda earlier, just the ability to grow up in this era and to grow with this revolution we're sitting on right now has been tremendous. I then, of course, if that was in the 80s, so then fast forward to the 90s. That is me with my then friend, became girlfriend, now my wife, Jen. And indeed, I have green hair. So this was the grunge era. You can see I'm rocking the boots and the flannel, as she is. So, this happened. We grow up, become this fine representative here, a senior executive, spent a lot of time in the talking circuit, all that kind of good stuff, relatively polished, but my 15-year-old self say, what happened? So here I am in my 40s now and have a little bit of a relatively tame midlife crisis, all things considering. The truth was, and you see if my profile on a site called Upwork, which is a professional freelancing site. I'll talk a lot more about that in a moment. But if that was like a dating site, it would say disenchanted tech exec pursuing abandoned passion and searching for professional companionship. The truth was, as many people in my era, my age, I was feeling like I had reached this pinnacle of what I had supposedly wanted in a career, but I was feeling a little bit empty, right? I wasn't necessarily as passionate about the work I was doing. I wasn't fingers on keyboards anymore, really building things that mattered. And so I did what I guess some people do when they have a midlife crisis. I started searching for a hobby, a side gig, a moonlighting gig, whatever you want to call it. And I posted my profile up on Upwork. And so that's the actual exchange that started what would end up being a 3-year journey, where I started by ghostwriting for a then 25-year-old future of work visionary thought leader, what you'd like to call him, but also in software, in Microsoft and Gixter. And this is what he said before we became authors. They can't get over the potential of hiring experts from this thing called the human cloud. We're going to talk a lot more about that. The fact that a 25-year-old can meet and hire a CTO by merely searching on Google is beyond comprehension. And that's really what I wanted to start talking about here, is platform that I didn't know anything about 3-4 years ago and I've stumbled onto, is really where half the workforce almost already is and will be. So 43% of the US population will be doing freelance work of some sort over the next 5 years. And you may think, that's one of those like far into the future forecasts, and they always get those wrong. Today, 33%, 1/3 of Americans have done freelance work at some point in their career, and many of them are doing it as a regular either side hustle or actually as their full-time role. Pretty staggering number. So if you think about that, it fundamentally shifts the way that we think about how we do work. It changes how we think about companies, how we think about projects and teams, how we think about virtual or physical engagement. So lots going on here to unpack. And the reality is, part of the reason why people are turning to freelance is because the corporate world isn't able to meet their needs and their demands anymore. So it's everything from the negatives of a corporation, like bias and inequity, unfulfilling work, which is what I found, lack of growth, hostile workplace, hierarchies, so on and so forth. What it really means is it looks a little bit more like this guy. It's an antiquated view of how work gets done. And really the key here is in all of these items, right? All of these items here, if I go back, they had their place. So the 19th, 20th century was really the centuries of the corporation. It's a relatively new concept, right? It existed, it came into existence as a better way to get work done. It was able to consolidate functions, consolidate people, organize them, and produce work in a more efficient and effective way than we could do as a tribe, right? As individuals working together. So that those transaction costs go down, corporations become the self-fulfilling prophecy of improving the output of work. That worked really well for a couple hundred years, but then technology came along. And what it has changed is where corporation used to be the most effective way to get things done in most cases. What we're seeing is a shift away from that. And it does not, I work in a company today, so it's not that this is a all or nothing proposition, but what we're seeing is the type of work we're doing, the projects that we're engaging in, the types of people that are out there that we want to and can do work with are starting to pull away from these centers of gravity into pockets and pools of people that can do work more flexibly. And we're seeing that shift away. And what that means is, and this is what I get so excited about as I learn more about this, is this new world really supports a change maker. So those that want to enact some kind of change in the world, whether that's improving their own quality of life, improving their communities, improving the globe. It's about making a positive change in the world. And we now have better tools to do that than we did 20, 30, 40 years ago. So if I'm sitting in a corporation today, I can be an intrapreneur, this concept of being an entrepreneur, but within the framework of an organization. But if you tried to do that like I have, it's incredibly maddening. You meet obstacle after obstacle, friction after friction, trying to get something done. And it's why so many people abandon that life if they truly want to be a change maker. All right, so what does that look like in practice? So first off, freelance is more than a gig. So if you're thinking of freelancing as Uber, DoorDash, etc., that's not the case, right? These are highly qualified, highly capable professionals. So everything from traditional IT, software developer, web designer, and so forth, ghostwriters, but also things like lawyers, accountants, and business advisors. These are people that you might not think of as freelancers, but there's actually this whole movement going on in a subculture around these highly accomplished professionals being freelancers, whether that's part-time or full-time. So what that means is really it's anything that can create value that's mostly project-based, right? It's defined, it has a beginning and an end, it's change-oriented, and it's virtual. Those are the best candidates for this freelance world. And of course, now we're sitting in COVID times in a fully virtual world. So you're seeing an acceleration of these freelance capabilities, even just in the last 6 to 9 months. But most importantly, this exists it exists in a larger ecosystem. Companies don't go away. Freelancers are not the only way to do work. What really is happening is we're seeing this shift toward a blended economy where corporations that used to have the lion's share of ownership in talent, value creation, and so forth are now having to share the stage. And they're sharing them with these solo practitioners, these freelancers that are full-time. But we're also seeing virtual teams. So if you think of things like startups, where you might have a couple of full-time employees, and then the rest of the company is largely operating as a virtual team. So there might be pockets of freelancers, they might be working with consultants, pulling them in. So it's this tapestry that's being created. And we're also seeing corporations start to engage freelancers more regularly. That's not easy to do always, but that's an option. So I mentioned this earlier, but this is really key, right? Virtual collaboration, cloud software, data, and personalization. Those are the 3 drivers. They're the mega trends that have shifted convenience of working in a company, frictionlessness of working in a company away from that and into this more fluid ecosystem with freelancers. And that has happened in the last 10 or 20, really 10 years, I would say. Freelancing has always been an option. Obviously, it's always been a section of our economy. But what we're seeing is where those people used to be sort of the rogues and the rebels that were largely on an island doing their own thing. Now it's becoming much more commonplace and it's becoming more supported and supportable. Networks are there, the communities are there, the technologies are there to have this be more prevalent than it was certainly when I was starting my career. All right. So a couple quick items. And actually, before we get on this, I'll sort of pause here because I'll switch gears into some of the tools and then start talking about AI next. But wanted to see if there's any questions in the audience or anything you'd like to ask before we keep going. Around on stage. All right, anybody? All right. Okay, let me hop back in then. So the tools that a lot of freelancers use may come as a surprise to you. So there's not, today at least, a really robust application suite that's geared toward freelancers. That is changing. But right now it's things that you might expect like Google Drive, Slack, Microsoft product like Teams and Office. So these are just typical tools. Trello is another one that I've used in my journey of freelancing over the last couple of years, as well as others. And I mentioned, so the co-author of my book, which we'll start talking about here in a bit more later, is Matthew Matola. So another Matt. It's a pretty common name of the 70s and 80s. He is building a tool that's really geared toward combining a lot of the functionality you get from these disparate tools into a platform that's purpose-built for freelancers. So he has just started that. It's called Venture L. It's pretty exciting to see. We've used it for a couple of our projects around the book, and it's been pretty helpful. So the last point on this, and I alluded to it earlier, is that corporations. Again, I'm CTO of a large, medium-sized technology company. I've worked in very large organizations. I've worked in startups. So I am not opposed to them by any stretch. I think they have a valuable place in the world. But they are going to have change. So what I have seen living within the organization is that just about every system is unintentionally set up to make freelancing really hard for corporations to use, to leverage as a resource. And if you think back to that early slide, if half the US population is working as freelancers and corporations cannot access that talent pool, what does that do? What does that do to the corporate value prop? Their hiring model, their staffing model will break, and it is breaking as droves of people are entering retirement age or leaving, opting out to go into the freelance and the startup communities. So they have to change, and that's everything from the HR systems that for engaging talent. So finding and engaging talent. It's things like payroll, tax code, even IT systems and cybersecurity, so the technical aspects of getting someone onboarded in a corporation, even if it's for a 2-week project. So if you think about it, companies can take anywhere from a week to over a month onboard someone, whether that's a new hire or a new company that they're looking to partner with, because there's all of these steps that have to be taken, and they typically take, a couple weeks or a month. The average freelance project less than a month. It may be 2 weeks, it could be 2 days. So if you're spending a month onboarding at a company to do a 2-week project, that doesn't make sense. So that has to flip. It has to become more nimble. And the one elephant in the room, at least in the US, may not be the case in other countries, but in the US healthcare, we don't have a good, as you all know, we don't have a good system of portable and universal healthcare. So freelancers are at a disadvantage. It can be expensive to carry self-insurance, if that's even an option. There are pre-existing conditions. We don't always have a significant other that we can rely on for healthcare coverage as well. So that needs to be solved for more globally than just on the corporation side. All right, so question, did you notice? I glazed over it when we talked about this slide before, but it's not just people on this graph. Increasingly, it's devices. What I mean by that is that this isn't just a story about bringing in human talent. This is a story about bringing in machine talent as well. So similarly, where we've got 43% of people moving into freelancing type of roles in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, over a third of US jobs are at a high risk of automation. High risk of automation by the early 30s. And what that means is that, and you've all seen it, and there is promise and there's peril in this. I have a balanced view on it, so I'm not a rah-rah AI is the be-all and all to everything, but I'm also not the AI is going to come and take over the world and we're all going to be subjugated by this superior technical AI race. Sit squarely in between, and that I'm a pragmatist. So what that looks like, though, is that where we might have turned to humans in the past, we can turn to technology in the future as a blended, sort of this blended model where we're leveraging human experts and machine algorithms at the same time. So this was a quote from our book that I said. Let's start with the obvious. The question is no longer who will be affected, but how will you be affected? And this is a bit of a sobering list, right? So Just quick scan of these. So roles at risk of automation: knowledge workers, lawyers, professionals, researchers, arts and entertainment, writers and journalists, IT, and then things like you might think would never be able to be automated, like finance and accounting or management. And then obviously in the physical realm, commercial driving, shipping, and logistics. So yeah, pretty much all of us, and I include myself in that. It's not a scare tactic. It's a favor and ask that I have of you all to consider this when you're mapping out your own futures and your own careers. How do you AI proof your career? And a lot of it has to do with leading on the human aspects that we have, which are that command and control, sort of rational thinking, organization, but also creativity and ingenuity and kinds of things that we, are more. We're taking risks and we're trying things out. We're experimenting in ways that a computer just might not do that. So what does that look like in practice? This is the fear. And be a journalist, right? We're saying, oh, we don't need a human anymore to write our articles. We've got robots can do research and can pull that together. They can write it, they can edit, they can publish, they can do all those things. We don't need a person anymore. And the reality is it looks a lot more like this, where there is a journalist still today that's doing some of the tasks, but they're leaning on algorithms to help with the underlying research, right? I'll call it at this point sort of the lower value work. They're digging up useful research, they're connecting the dots, they're weaving that into a narrative, and then that's the fodder, then the substance that the journalist can shape into an article that is all his or hers. Can then help with editing and publishing as well. It can do things like search engine optimization and marketing and return on investment of that marketing. It can do all of those kind of things for you as well, but with a human expert sort of weighing in and driving things. This is obviously happening today, right? We have things like, well, obviously Google. We have tools like Grammarly and Sumly that can do sort of automated content curation and some drafting. And then certainly tools like Hootsuite and others that are managing social media. So those kind of tools exist today, and increasingly as they develop and become more mature, the art of us as humans is to synthesize those technologies, bring them together to deliver higher value work. And that's what this looks like, right? I have used this example in the past where financial analysts, so AI out of the moment for a second, and so financial analysts, when you're doing when they're doing work, the joke is that they're spending, or the pain is that they're spending 80 to 90% of their time just gathering and massaging data, and only 10% of their time actually doing what they were brought in to do, which is to provide that human lens to interpret and to provide advice. And so a lot of the tools in the financial AI and what's called business intelligence space is creating tools that handle all of that mess for the analysts so that they can focus on doing what analysts do best, which is to analyze, predict, and provide valuable input. And so that paradigm is applying everywhere. So where AI and other technologies can help do the bulk of the busy work for us, it means we can spend what used to be 5 or 10%, that sliver of time can now be our primary job. And we can focus on things like relationships and true leadership, sort of empathetic leadership, really deep thinking, focusing around how I adapt technology to my problem. So these are all the things that we as humans can do, should be doing, as opposed to the nuts and bolts of whatever our job might be today. Obviously, the key here, though, right, is that you have to want this. You have to have those skill sets or be willing to be trained and to learn them. So this is, like so many other things in our modern society, the opportunity is there. We have to want it and seek it. If we're sitting back waiting for this to happen, we will be caught flat-footed. So that's my ask for all of you, is continue to learn about these and absorb this. Think about ways that you can continue to improve yourself each year with learning and growth and new skills and making yourself uncomfortable, like putting yourself up on stage and speaking, which I used to be terrified of. Do all those things to get better at them so that when the time comes, you're ready, you're on your front foot, you're ready to lead. So just wrapping up here, thinking about what's on the horizon. So two areas, right? So when we talk human cloud, when we talk about that freelance economy, what we're seeing is that as a consequence of this, companies will need to learn and will adapt and evolve, they have to become more effective. And that means things like improving management, so being more empathetic leadership, more flexible, less hierarchical. Corporations will begin to learn how to work better in this world. And then there's this notion of portable merit and identity. And we're already seeing this today, right? It used to be that most individuals attached their identity to their career, and not just to their career, but to their company. So I grew up in Ohio, so, it was a GM town. So a lot of people were GM for life, that lived and breathed, and that was their identity. Especially in things like technology now, it's a little bit more about stringing together a series of roles, of jobs that make a career. So my identity is more around the types of work that I've done for the various companies that I've worked for. But those are measured in 3 to 5 year spans. Portable merit and identity means I'm 26 and I have done 5 years of projects for 20 different organizations, including other freelancers. I have a portfolio of work I can share, and that travels with me. And that's, again, technology. I've got things like LinkedIn and other social media platforms that I can capture that experience and not have to rely on a resume and a company to say, yes, this person was here for 3 years and they did the same job for 3 years. So in addition to that, that goes hand in hand, right? This integrated career growth. We're not on a corporate ladder anymore. We're not on a career ladder. It's really more of a career web. We can go up, down, sideways, and it's more about the experiences that we're building and the skill sets and maturity we're building. And it's not a one size fits all climb up that ladder. And that's really part of the reason why freelance has caught on as much as it has, is because that's incredibly appealing to the younger generation that looks at what, we did, our parents did, and said, it's not for me. That's not what I want. So lastly then, so let's flip over on the machine side, and really no surprises here. It's AI will become more powerful. There's, hands down, having written these algorithms over the last 20 years, it is very clear that we are beginning of the hockey stick, not at the end of the hockey stick of AI capability. So that means AI in everything we do. We're already seeing that with our devices like Alexa and Siri and so forth, but we're seeing it increasingly in other areas like our vehicles, our e-commerce experiences, conferences like this, everywhere. And then this blending of physical and virtual, where I couldn't think of a better venue to talk about that. And then also more generalizable AI. So right now, the dirty secret of AI is it takes a lot of training, a lot of programming to actually get it to seem like it's being very intuitive and simple. Like it seems simple on the outset, perhaps, until you just go a little bit off the side, and then you fall down a cliff of understanding of AI because it isn't able to abstract out even a little bit. It's getting better, but there's a long way to go there. And as that gets better, it will be easier, less expensive to build these AI systems. And then extreme personalization, meaning that these systems really are intended to be, they work best when they can make really nuanced and personalized decisions about us, right? And we think Netflix and Amazon and these other sites that are using these algorithms, it works because they really do understand us for the most part, right? And that gets a little bit creepy too sometimes, where it's recommending things. You're like, I just searched for that, and well, are they looking at my search history? So there's a privacy element here that is a balancing act. And I think as long as we understand that and are open-eyed about it and have constraints around it so that it doesn't go off the rails, it can be useful, it can be helpful, but that needs to be an opt-in experience. All right. So I talked earlier about the change maker. I do believe, based on all the research that we've done in the last 3 years leading up to this book, that we are in the beginning of a new renaissance. And if you think about the Vitruvian ideal, the Vitruvian man that Da Vinci sort of drew up you see it on all the medical textbooks and things like that. We're in a different one, right? And this change maker really is sitting at the forefront what this new renaissance will look like. We're going to have people that are highly independent, capable, high value, but working with others and building what we call tribes, building new connections and new relationships that span companies and geographies. I'll give you an example that our book, so we spent a couple of years trying to find a publisher, as I think most authors experience. So we finally landed with a wonderful one in HarperCollins. We then wrote the book, finished writing the book, and then I've spent a year in the publishing process. So it's a lengthy journey. It actually comes out in January. But the best part of it wasn't the book. It was this, that we actually had made new friendships with us. So younger guy behind me is the other Matt that I wrote the book with. Sam, the woman to your right, is Samantha, is our project manager and editor. We actually, and a freelancer. She's a full-time freelancer. We brought her in for this project. Seemed right to have a freelancer help with a book about freelancing. And this was our sort of jam session. So this was we had 3 printouts of about 200 pages each, going through and slashing everything up at Sam's house in Cincinnati. Matt is from was Washington, now Singapore. So you can see how far spread out we are, but we made these friendships and tribe, and we actually work together still. So that's the story. That's the story. So as I mentioned, the book comes out in January. It was great fun to write, but it sort of encapsulates what I hope to cover here today. So with that, see if anybody has questions, and I'm happy to hang around as well.
Yeah, I've got a question here, Matt. So at this time right now, as we're transitioning, is there any categories that you would say, hey, the top categories, if you're thinking about it or what you're seeing trending, what are some of the top categories for freelancers for them to get in and really start making some money or making a dent in that?
Sure. So I'd say the ones that are most crowded right now and have been around the longest are in the sort of tech creative space. So think designing, branding, websites, social media. Those have been and remain at the top, but they're also fairly crowded. What we are seeing is with platforms like Upwork, which actually it was a merger of 2 smaller freelance platforms. What we're seeing now is that niche roles actually have better success as a freelancer. So for instance, machine learning, like if you know how to write software, I know that's not terribly applicable again, because it's niche. That is incredibly popular right now for the low volume of people that know how to do that work. So it actually goes back to supply and demand. So what we're seeing is sort of niche roles that may be a little bit obscure for freelancing actually have the best success rate, particularly if they're high professional. So think, I mentioned attorneys, accountants, project managers. These are skill sets and trades that are pretty popular, pretty much out there, but not many people have jumped into the freelance bandwagon with those yet. And so there's a lot of opportunity from a supply demand perspective. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that was good. Good. We have a question too down there in the chat. You can read it. Go ahead, unless you want me to read it.
There we go. All right. So some of the best ways to market yourself as a freelancer. Great. We talk about that quite a bit. So first and foremost, and this goes for anybody, but I think it's especially true for freelancers, is having a consistent profile, meaning a consistent messaging around yourself, a consistent brand, personal and professional brand. So making sure that you're highlighting the value that you add, that you're being specific, and that you have, photography and imagery and what you're blogging about or posting about all resonate around your theme. that more than anything else, like having that consistent theme is critical because it makes it easier for people to understand what your value proposition is and to engage you. So beyond that, what we're seeing, certainly the social media sites, particularly LinkedIn, still is a go-to place for most in the professional, and that includes freelancers. Upwork is a good site. It can be expensive. Their business model is they'll take a portion of your proceeds and it decreases as your earnings go up, but it can be 10 to 15, 20% even sometimes. So that can get pretty pricey. But I would say, depending on the type of freelancer you're doing, there are sites out there like TopTall and others that are focused in a niche, right? Whether it's graphic design, tech, accounting, there tend to be sites that are specific to that, and so you can actually cut through some of the noise and get to clients quicker. But I'll say most of the freelancers that we talk to, it bit of a flywheel. So it starts slow. It's a bit painful. You need to use sites like Upwork and others and really do a lot of outbound. You can on Upwork, you can look through jobs and actually bid on jobs. So you need to be on the hunt and going out and saying, I'm the person for this. That's what I did when I was doing ghostwriting that sort of landed me in this. After a couple of years of good track record and really wowing your clients, it starts to flip. Probably within 3 to 5 years, most of it is inbound and word of mouth, to be honest. And then it's the question of, do you try to scale yourself? Do you try to build more of a team and a company around it? Or are you happy doing the freelancing thing and just sort of turning down the extra work that comes in because you just don't have the capacity? So, all right, yes, good freelancer groups to connect with and know. So I actually just learned of one, and I believe it's called the Freelancers Union. That is a significant one. It touts a very large population and growing. So I think it's Freelancers Union. I'll make sure I get the right URL for that. I mentioned VentureL, so it's venturel.io. Yes, this is a plug, but I have no vested interest in it. It's a plug for my friend. But that site is really starting to ramp up in terms of usage, and they have a Slack channel that's very robust, and a lot of freelancers are doing tips and tricks and things like that. So if you subscribe to VentureL's feed on LinkedIn, they'll share a lot of content about other networks, and they do a lot of podcasts with other freelancing communities. So those 2 places I'd recommend starting with. Any other questions?
If you don't mind too, if you can, Matt, I'm just put those into the chat box if you do have them.
Sure. Let me find those real quick and I'll add them in for us.
I do love the name of the book, by the way. That is perfect.
It is, like many things, it is much better left to the professionals, because I think our working title for it was like the Big Leap Forward, which we were both enamored with, and then our marketing folks with HarperCollins took it out, and we're like, no, that's not it. So they tested about 5 or 6 different titles with our input, and they landed on that. At first, we were like, but it doesn't really cover the AI piece, but we're so glad we stuck with it. It really has resonated well.
Yeah, it says a lot. It makes you think about it, and I think really makes you identify the importance of the human factor, like you said, and how that will be such the driving really niche that people will have to really focus on, because AI will do what AI will do, but the human factor is going to be the key to really taking us to the next level with blending with that and staying. We should change it from freelancer to paylancer, though. I've always hated the name.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there's a whole separate conversation that we probably don't have time to go into, but around how you value yourself. Definitely price for value, price for the alleviation of the pain you are solving for the client. don't sort of take a race to the bottom. Don't try to price it based on, well, my hourly rate would be this, which would give me a comfortable life. Like, the more you price to value and the more you drive your value up, your price will naturally go up as well. But easier said than done. I'm not great with the pricing exercise as well as the ask. So that's a goal that I need to get better at as well. Great. I put those 2 sites in the chat. Happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, I think we can wrap up. Great.
Great.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate you being here, and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, etc. Happy to chat and discuss further.
Awesome. Thanks again, Matt. Want to come up and say thank you, and just let everybody know. I know Matt's going to be here at least throughout the rest of the month. Hopefully you'll be here back and on a regular basis with all the great stuff you've got, and we'll be promoting the book through here. And as we continue to grow, keep coming here and hanging out with us, and we'll do it together. We'll keep the human factor inside of the virtual world. We like to say, go virtual, but stay human. I think that's right. So that's why your book. Your book title rings with us. But thank you again so much. And again, even for people who are going to be watching this video, again, in the weeks and months to come, Matt will be set up with a booth in our expo hall. And again, hopefully you'll be running around here. And if you see him, walk up and just talk to him, ask him any questions. He might run away from you, jump in a boat and drive around the island. We just don't know. But if you do catch him, I'm sure he'd be glad to talk to you. And so again, thanks so much, Matt. And we appreciate you big time, and look forward to everything else. One last shake before we shake again. Let's do it.
Good.
There we go.
All right.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much.
Thanks all.